Game two is in the books. Series tied 1-1. OKC with a huge 123-107 victory. This is the closers. We back. Me, Mark Haynes, a dog, Jelani. We're missing one, but we are all good. Now that the series is tied, y'all, what does this mean for the finals? Do we have a new favorite, or did the favorites ever change? Was it always still OKC?
Yeah, I think it was always OKC, even after they lost game
Mhm.
one. Indiana came in there and did what Indiana's been doing all postseason, punching their opponents in the mouth to the last second, stealing games.
All right.
I expected OKC to win this game, but I was like, okay, are they gonna come back? Is Indiana gonna make another run just because they've done it so
So many times.
much,
Right.
so many times, right? But it was a great game, and I knew OKC in one of these games was gonna blow out Indiana. Because if you look at all the other series, they always had a blowout victory or two. Even against
Hmm.
Denver, it was 7 game series, but it was two blowouts. So I knew that blowout was gonna come. I just didn't know when. It came game two. But OKC played a great game. They played defense very well, and they didn't let their foot off the gas. They didn't
Right.
all the way. I think he
Hmm.
pulled them out. The starters out at 2 minutes left. But yeah, they was like, we are not going to make the same mistake we did on Thursday night. So series tie 1-1. We're going back to Indiana. We'll see what happens.
Hmm.
Yeah,
About you, a dog. Anything changed, man?
I think it's just the classic case of we stole game one. We're ready for going back home to Indiana. I'm not entirely sure if they didn't try to win the game. I just think OKC had the desperation and the momentum was really in their favor. I think anytime the game was getting closer into that range of Indiana could strike again, OKC really executed it. I think some of the additional players that we saw get into the rotation, we're talking like Aaron Wiggins,
Hmm.
and just Case was it Case and Wallace, or
Yeah.
he was just really doing a good job in terms of like, yeah, I played defense on the game-winning shot, game one, but stay focused, keep playing. It's one game, and I think for it to be back to a 5-game series now, um, nothing has changed in my opinion, but Indiana definitely has the pressure now to go back and take care of business. So
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I thought think the same. I think after game one, I think OKC, still were, in the driver's seat. That was even though that was a huge victory for the Pacers. You know what I mean? And coming back the way they've done all this time. But I thought the coach, I think OKC coach, I think he blew it in game one. I think going small, although he came in with the same starting lineup today, but he played Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein, both over 22 minutes or whatever, 22 and 27. And Kaysen played 22. So he played big a lot of the game. And
yeah.
I think that was like the biggest difference. And I think now, originally I go back to my first prediction, and I
Mhm.
said it was gonna be a gentleman's sweep.
Mm.
And I'm back to that. I'm back to thinking it's gonna be that. And it's like these teams are very evenly matched, but
Mhm.
the only thing that the Pacers can't match up that OKC has is them bigs playing both bigs. You
Mhm.
know, Miles Turner, he's been playing terrific. He had a good game today, but that's like it's easy math. Two versus one.
Mhm.
Yeah, that the two is gonna win. And that's kind of how I see this series playing out. So I think gentlemen sweep, maybe six, but still OKC think
Yeah.
they're getting their first chip this year.
Mhm.
And speaking of them getting their first chip, young guys led by young SGA. If SGA wins the NBA Finals this year, or Do he even need to win the NBA Finals to be considered unanimously the best Canadian basketball player ever? Is the best basketball player from Canada named Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
Man,
Jelani, I'm gonna let you take that one first, man. I gotta think
You
about
okay. That's the problem with our generation. Anytime somebody do something good, are they the best? Are they better than this person? I'm
it.
like,
Yeah,
come on,
you
bro.
gotta go
Bro,
back in
26
time and
years
really
old, 27
remember.
years old, however old he is. But I'm gonna say, as of today, no.
hmm hmm
Now, is he on the trajectory to be the best Canadian player ever? Absolutely. He's on the trajectory. Um, Unfortunately, it's still Steve Nash. And I got a little vendetta with Steve Nash because he took one of Kobe's MVPs. It's all good.
hmm
I'm still gonna give it to him, even though on paper, if you look at it on paper, though, as far as stats and stuff, SGA is probably a little bit more appealing. But yeah, man, not yet, not yet. Now, if he wins this chip this season,
hmm
it's up for debate for sure.
Mhm.
It's
hmm
up for debate. Hey man, I would love to see him as the best player from out of Canada. I love to see that, just so it's not Steve Nash anymore. You feel me? Like, and they beat us in back to back first round series. Back when I was in
hmm
high school. So just like the Spurs, I don't really like Phoenix like that.
uh,
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, I know Steve Nash is probably hoping and praying SGA don't win. Like he's like, no, I want to be the best player in Canada's history. Like
You know what, man?
it's Steve
Steve
Nash,
Nash
man, your
is
time's
yeah.
coming up.
hey, but Steve Nash is he's a Los Angeles Laker. 2 seasons with y'all, played 60 games. Averaged 11 points and what was 6.4. Nobody claims him as a Laker.
That's a
Absolutely
technical
not.
foul, man. That's like when professional European soccer players come to play in the MLS over here, bro. And everybody is,
Man, that's a
oh man,
My
he
bad.
plays in
Mark,
America.
you
Like,
you
no, he
kicked me
does
out the
not. This is
podcast.
not
My
his
bad, y'all. Hey,
ethnicity.
LA, don't disown me. My bad. My bad.
No, but hey,
My
in
apologies.
in all seriousness, Mark, actually though, I think that year was essentially kind of like the downfall of Kobe's health streak, so to speak.
Yeah.
Steve
hmm
Nash, Dwight was coming off an injury, so it was
Mhm.
never going to be the best version of him. But his mind wanted to go certain places and manipulate defenses, but his body couldn't follow. I know he
hmm
had
Mm.
like that nerve issue that he was dealing with. But to get back on that question you asked, I'm very much at times a prisoner of the moment, and I appreciate having cousins and family members that watch sports that try to remind me of letting people's careers play out before we crown them the best of whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
hmm
So I think
hmm
in that breath and in that level of respect, because he hasn't finished, so we can't like Steve Nash does have two MVPs. The level of efficiency that he played at, I think, and that it was just like some really interesting actually was like my mom was somebody who was a huge fan of Steve Nash, and I remember watching
Mm.
games and being like, you can't be cheering for this guy every time he makes a layup and every time he manipulates what the Lakers were trying to do. And it was during the Raja Bell and like young
hmm
Boris Diaw and Amari Stoudemire when he turned
Yep.
into the stat. So to answer the question, man, I do think SGA is on the trajectory, like Jelani said. But I'm a prisoner of the moment today, and I think consistently, I will say SGA, regardless of what happens going forward, I think has secured a space in that
Mm.
conversation, and it's 1A, 1B until he finishes out this finals, and let's see if he has a ring. But this MVP season this year for me was like beating out somebody like Jokic. That means you have a lot of goodwill amongst journalists, media members, but also your peers, right? Your peers also have to
hmm
recognize who you are. So, yeah, I think SGA, from that respect, how far he's come since being traded to OKC to being considered a face of the league, carrying a brand like Converse, there's just a lot to be said about that. So, I'll give him his flowers at the moment.
And I
Most
like the
definitely.
shoes. I like the shoes too. He had the baby blue joints on today.
Mm.
Those are really nice. And I like both of y'all answers. I don't. think y'all wrong in certain respects. But I don't call it prisoner of the moment. I'm saying it right now. I don't. It's going to happen if it takes a chip to get this done.
Mm,
SGA is the best Canadian basketball player ever, and I don't need him to get a chip. I don't need to like. It's gonna definitely throw some salt in my to in the wound if they lose this series, which I don't think they will. But if
mhm,
they lost this series, that'd put a wrench in my pick. But I think he's the best Canadian basketball player because he's also, people don't talk about it enough. He's a two-way player.
Yeah.
He played both ends of the floor. And that was something, Steve Nash was a guy that you could pick on, when he's on defense. So in that regards, being 6'6", being the bigger player, having the ability to score the way he does,
mhm,
I'm saying SGA right now already with one MVP, with
Mm.
one I know it's a new award, but Western Conference Finals MVP,
Hmm.
soon to be Finals MVP. I think the Finals MVP makes it not even a debate.
mhm,
That's something that Steve Nash hasn't even been a part of. He haven't smelt a Finals MVP. So that's
You're not lying.
why I'm rolling with SGA as the best Canadian basketball player
All right,
ever.
let me say this. Let me say this really quick before we move on to something else. So, would you consider Steve Nash the top 10 point guard of all time?
oh, this is a great.
That's a good one.
We're going there, aren't we?
No,
We might
because
as
here's
well. Let me
and
let
I
me
asked
shut
that
my
for this.
laptop real quick. Forget what we was talking about. Let me shut my laptop. Top 10. I want to say no. I want to say no. I understand the two-time MVPs. A lot of us, question if it should have even been one. Was because I think one was what Kobe.
One was
Shaq,
Kobe's.
Shaq's
That's
claim one was his, and I think one
Hmm.
was LeBron's. So I think it was debate of who was really the MVP. But I think Steve Nash and the Suns and stuff, they peaked at the right time of where the minds of the voters and stuff and media was changing.
mhm.
And but nah, top 10 ever. I think let's go through this real quick. Let's start naming
Okay.
some people. Just off top, we got Magic, we got Steph.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Just off top, so we two down. If we going, me personally, I look. So we got Magic, Steph. I'm taking Gary Payton over Steve Nash personally.
You got to throw Isaiah in there.
I'm take I'm taking Isaiah.
John
That's
Stockton.
I'm taking John Stockton.
We
That's
taking
five already.
So we at five.
we
I t-
taking
I
Chris
took
Paul.
SGA.
You
So we at
did.
I took SGA. So we at six. I'm taking.
We putting SGA as like a point guard, or are we doing the hybrid point guard in this conversation as well?
That's the other thing. That's the other thing. I'm putting him as a point guard because
No, no, he has enough facilitation to put him in that. Because
yeah,
I mean,
I'm putting him
he
as a
averaged
point
six
guard.
assists, so
Mm.
it's not like he's not getting people involved. He's more of a scorer.
Plus he's a Canadian, so I'm throwing him in there. Um,
The double jab.
yeah. Then we got
I mean,
Jason Kidd.
hmm I mean,
Okay.
even how about Westbrook and Dame?
And Chris Paul. Did we say Chris Paul yet?
We
Nope.
ain't saying Chris Paul. I'm
Yes,
taking
sir.
that. I'm
All right.
taking I'm taking Dame. Nah, I'm not. I don't care. Yeah. Steve Nash. There you go. Sad. Clip that. Steve Nash is not the top 10 point guard of all time.
I just
Because
want to hear you say it.
I think out of all the players, we named, I think all of them are better defenders. So I think they're better two-way players. No, he is not in the top 10 point guards all time, even with his two MVPs. There we
Good.
go.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
There we go. And speaking of tops, that sounds horrible. But speaking of top players or whatever, Michael Beasley and Lance Stevenson just had their, their 1v1 face off. Mike Beasley, I think, won 31-21. Um, I think when I thought about the matchup, I think I had Michael Beasley winning that
Mhm.
matchup. Lance Stevenson he's a hooper, just like most people in the NBA. But people say Michael Beasley is different, and as we've seen in the promo video and stuff, he's just a different type of animal in general. But when it comes to playing ones, and you hear, like we had Ty Lawson on the show. He's supposed to play, Brandon Jennings. And playing 5-on-5 is a totally different game than playing ones. The best players, like, I don't know if y'all seen, I think I brought it up and mentioned it, but it was a video of Cam Reddish at a Lakers practice. And Cam Reddish was cooking everybody.
Mm,
And because he can really do ones. He's one of those guys. He's one of them ones, in the words of Michael Beasley again. He's one of them ones.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always translate into a full 5-on-5 game. But when it comes to ones, first question I want to ask y'all: who do y'all think could beat Michael Beasley? Because they say nobody beat him. They say he used to beat LeBron every day in practice, and whatever.
Mhm.
What player, current, past, whatever, do y'all think Michael Beasley couldn't have beat or can't beat?
mm. You go first, Adol.
I'll tell you what. I think the thing about him is he has that like uncanny ability to use the pivot foot and like the
Yeah.
body feint and like the quick, misdirection to get to those spots. So whoever I would have to defend or match up with him would have to be somebody that has like quick twitch fibers and is able to recover quickly because that's what he predicates like his whole attack on is he's he's overly confident, but it's because he knows not a lot of people have because he's coming at you downhill. Not a lot of people can react to all the things he's gonna do to manipulate. So I would say it had to be somebody left-handed would also be helpful. And
Mm,
the name that's really coming to me, I just not sure if I could count on the shot, but I think Julius Randle would be like a good matchup.
mm, mm.
Uh,
Wow.
because that's like somebody that might have the same archetype in terms of just body size, ability to
Yeah.
play. But
I
I'll
like
have
I
to see.
like I like where you went
I
with
have
that.
to see that that's someone that sticks out without giving him too. Because I'm thinking along the lines of like how boxing, and they try to keep the weight class in the same range. And I feel like from that perspective, I don't think Lance
Mm.
stood much of a chance.
That's
You know,
exactly,
so
exactly. Yep. Nah, I'm with you on that. I
that's
like
one
what you
name that
did with
comes up
that
to
though.
mind. Another person
Me
that
too.
might have a size advantage on him, same team, I would say is like again a Nas Reed, but I've seen clips of Nas Reed on the one-on-one workouts, and I'm not sure if that's exactly his game. Even though he's like that's not a diss at all. It's just to say,
Right, right,
but it
right.
would have to be somebody that could stop him defensively to even have a remote chance.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I like that. I like that because Julius Randle he's a beast. He's a handful, 1-on-one, and
Yeah.
like you said, similar left-handed. And I do think that gives Beasley an advantage. But you got anybody in mind, Jelani?
I do. Another person, another big body person I feel can go blow for blow in the same weight class, skillful, one of the greats.
Mm,
Not currently in the NBA. I have one currently and one
Okay.
not. I'm gonna start with the person that's not. My man, Carmelo Anthony.
mm, mm-hmm,
I think
mm-hmm,
Melo, just from the stories, the way Kobe used to talk about him,
Yeah.
other players to talk about him, they would say that was the hardest person to guard,
Yeah.
mm-hmm,
right? And during that era, Tracy McGrady was in the league,
mm-hmm,
Kobe was in the league. They're like, nah, Carmelo Anthony was the hardest person because he could do everything
Yeah.
offensively and he was big and strong.
mm-hmm,
So, he could post them up. He could do a lot of different things. I would say Carmelo. I would love to see Michael Beasley in his prime versus Melo in his prime. And then the current person I have in the league that I think will give him trouble is KD.
mm,
He's 7 feet
mm-hmm,
tall.
Mm-hmm.
right? He's fast. He could do everything, right?
Yeah.
KD is just hard to stop in general. Like a lot of people have him. I've heard people say he's the best offensive player of all time.
Right.
Um, right, because he has the skill set, but he's also 7 feet tall. So those would be my two. Um,
That'll be a
but
nice
I'll
DMV
get
DMV matchup too.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
So
that's all I'll go
yeah,
say. Not sorry to cut you off,
no, you
John,
good. Go ahead.
but no, like somebody has to ask KD that question because just knowing, the type of competitor that Michael Beasley is and him and KD, coming up through AAU together, being friends, long,
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
had to have played once. Like
Hmm.
what happened in those matchups or whatever. Like that's what I want to know. Like is Beasley confidently says he's the one. He's, nobody can beat him. And he
Mhm.
says that, and the person I've never heard speak on it is KD. And I know he had to play him before.
Mhm.
And I know they boys and stuff, but this like, this is what we want to see. I want to see best friends, play each other or whatever for a good game of ones or whatever. So I love the matchups you called. Mine is you mentioned them, but my player that's not in the league who I think would beat Michael Beasley if they played in his prime is Tracy McGrady.
Mm.
Tracy McGrady is
Hmm.
he's a guy that like he has the quickness of a small guard. He has the length of a power forward. Like he's long and he can shoot the ball. He can.
Yep.
One thing that he does better, and the reason why I would pick him over Bees is that he's a better defender. Lance
Mhm.
Stevenson scored 21, so it's not like I don't think Michael Beasley is really trying to lock anybody up. It's
Yeah.
1-on-1, but the way Tracy McGrady was wired, like I think he would take equal pride on
Mm.
defending you, then scoring on you. You
I
know what I'm
like that. I
saying?
like that.
So I think Tracy. I'm taking Tracy over. I think Tracy McGrady, my opinion, I think he might be the greatest one-on-one player of all time, even though it was a mythical story about him and Kobe. And Kobe said they were playing ones,
Yep.
and T Mac said they were working on ones, and Kobe was keeping track and said he won 11 too. So, my opinion, I think T Mac's the greatest. He would be the greatest one-on-one player,
That's a good
but
pick.
who knows? But then when it comes to the current player, I'm going with the current MVP of the league, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I would
Mm.
love to see Mike Beasley, Shea go at it. Like I think Shea would be an amazing one-on-one player because the way he manipulates, the game and playing fives, the way he manipulates it, he turns it into a one-on-one match. And
Mhm.
Mm.
he's comfortable in tight spots or whatever. And I think if it's just literally him and somebody else on the other side, he has Beasley's bigger than him, so Beasley it would definitely be a close game. But I think Shea could get enough stops to edge him out because I don't think Beasley could stop Shea at all. But I'm sure Mike Beasley feel the same way about Shea guarding him, and that's the beauty of ones. And
Yeah.
with like we got all these ideas of who we would like to see play and whatnot. Should Adam Silver in the NBA implement playing one on one in the All Star game or All Star weekend because they're struggling with the dunk contest, the 3-point contest? It is what it is. Nobody's upset with it,
Yeah.
but to have ones in the NBA, instead of bringing in G leaguers, no shot at Mac
Yeah.
McClung or whatever to do the dunk contest to make it
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should they just go ones? Like, would that be enough to help revive All Star Weekend?
I actually have a overall look on what's going wrong with the All Star Weekend. So
Mm,
first and foremost, I think every aspect of All Star Weekend has peaked. Right. I think
yeah.
like the dunk contest will have those special competitions, right, and it'll be those special moments we'll remember. Like I mean, since Vince Carter's dunk contest, we've had like Gerald Green, Josh Smith, we had Dwight, and we
Mm-hmm.
had Zach Levine and Aaron Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's kind of been the Mac McClung show. There's nothing wrong with how that's played out. But me, a traditionalist, someone that does like to
Yeah.
keep the NBA tradition alive, it did disappoint me that the dunk contest has gotten to a point where we're just leaving it to the secondary league for it to be a competitive event.
Mm.
As a product, I don't understand how the NBA allows that to be, a 3 year thing.
Yeah.
So that from that standpoint, it's like it's unheard of. I haven't seen that in other professional leagues. With
Mm-hmm.
the 3 point contest, like Steph and Clay and Dame, they had a run where they were just kind of essentially. That's not to say that that's probably still the one competition that gets people excited, right? And we might have better competitions. I know that they do the other one, the skills challenges. People are doing it with their left hand.
Yeah.
There's no either the incentive and the amount of money that you make is not there, or it's too many obligations during All Star Weekend to where players are not giving it their all. So like if they were to say like $5 million 1-on-1 tournament, 10 players in the NBA, I think they would do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it just again it all comes with buying, and it's disappointing that players that already make millions of dollars need to be incentivized with $5 more million, I guess.
Mm.
But that's what it takes. So you got to do it. That's
Gotta
that's the
do it.
price of business. So that's
No.
my take on it right now, and I think the one-on-one thing, it would take a lot of good momentum and people not being afraid to lose on the world stage. Because if we have 10 players play, 9 people are not going to win, and I'll
Yeah.
just leave it at that. Because anything else that I say might be a little too critical. I don't know how many players can handle the type of ridicule that would come from that.
Right. Because it'll definitely be talked about.
Yeah,
Yeah, man, that's a good point. The ridicule.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody watching. This ain't at practice, right? You can
yeah,
Right.
keep that in house. I
Yeah.
think that the fans would love it. As a fan,
Mm-hmm.
I would love it. I definitely want to see, you know, maybe 8 players, little tournament, right? First to 11, win by two. So
Mm-hmm.
you could really see who's the dog. But like, I feel like their mentality. I think that's the key word, mentality. Who's willing to do this in front of the world and
yeah,
possibly get embarrassed, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So if
Yeah.
someone like an SGA, for instance, did it, he's the MVP. But let's say somebody, it's all hypothetical, of course, somebody dog
Right.
him. Oh, he
Right.
ain't the MVP because KD dogged him 1-on-1.
Right.
Right. And you got to live with that. And we all know the MVP is based on what you're doing with the other 4 guys on the court, not what you can do 1-on-1. But I think it will bring excitement back to the All Star game.
yeah,
Would love to see it next season. I know it's not happening next season because and I will be excited for it to happen next season because I live in LA. It's gonna be at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. I'm like, man, I would pay to go see that in person
yeah,
if it was in
Yeah.
my city.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it would be dope. I
Mm.
think it'll be great. And the way and like, we kind of talked about like weight class. It would be cool to see like a version of it with bigs, like 8 bigs,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
have eight
Small,
guards slash
large, yeah,
forwards. So
Mm-hmm.
like the guys that are like 6'8", 6'9", and up, right? And then
Yeah.
so I think that'd be the best way to do it. Like, who wouldn't want to see like I love to see Embiid versus Jokic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love to
Okay, could I,
see.
could I could I could I actually add something to that too, Jelani? Not to cut you off, man.
No, you good, bro.
I really do think that something just popped up in my mind. Like, imagine those players that are on like a 1 year contract or a 2 year contract
Yeah.
who have the
Yeah.
skill set.
Yeah.
Like, we could even go away from it being superstar
Stars. Yep.
driven, and you could have
Exactly.
players that are on a 1 year contract for let's say 2 million or 1 million
Hey,
and playing for five might
thanks,
really be.
thanks a lot, dog. Thanks a lot for taking what I
I'm
was
sorry, bro. I'm
saying. I
sorry, man.
appreciate it.
Go ahead and
Go
take it,
ahead,
man. Go
dog.
ahead
I'm
and
Hey
like,
take it.
man, great minds think alike.
yeah, I was sitting there. That's all I was thinking. I was like, it don't even have to be the superstars.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah,
it would be so entertaining to see, like you said, the guys that's on a 1 year deal, the guys that are playing for a contract extension or whatever. Like, I think it's some hungry, NBA players out there that's looking for a main stage, and that
yeah,
would be a way to give it to them because maybe you're not like we look at tonight's game, Aaron Wiggins.
yeah,
Like Wiggins, when he gets going, he came off the bench and during the season he had a 40-point game.
yeah,
hmm.
So clearly he can go get buckets, but
yeah,
he's not gonna get buckets like that with OKC like that.
yeah,
SGA is there, Jalen Williams, Chet. He has to get it in rhythm, but
Second order.
would he go out there and play, you know, you know, I can't think of anybody's name right now, but I could see a player like him in it. I could see rookies, but and maybe after a while, maybe the stars will come out because it's All Star Weekend. But nah, y'all, I think it's a must. I think they have to bring it in somehow.
I mean,
Yeah,
And
man, I'm all
I
for it.
also wanted to add something else, man. I think there needs to be a way that the WNBA has to align their season to where, like, maybe they're starting their season right around like maybe like they're midway during All Star Weekend, like the NBA, because
mhm,
that would be a great thing to have to elevate. I think the exposure, right? Because
yeah,
it's a subsidiary of the NBA. But that's a sidebar that I've always thought the All Star Weekend is missing. It's been cool. Like I think Sabrina Ionescu and Steph
with a
Curry
partner.
did their thing a few years back, or was it Clark? I'm sorry. We could
No,
we
no,
could we could
it's
add them.
Sabrina.
Yeah, okay. So we could add Clark though into the mix now, and if not changing their seasons, having them like having a 3 point contest where they're actually participants as
Right.
opposed, So
Yeah,
that's
that
just a
that
sidebar, but I think the NBA needs to add more events and take away from superstars need to drive because their superstars are driving the NBA all season long.
Period. Yeah, yeah. Let them rest.
I
Yeah.
just want to say one last thing to this topic. Could you imagine if a guy on a 10-day contract beats an NBA superstar 1-on-1? Like
Yeah,
what that would do?
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
Aaron Wiggins beating Steph on a 1-on-1?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd
Boy.
be insane, and that's why I
Mhm.
think we could lead the superstars out. Like I think when we look at Michael Beasley and Lance Stevenson or whatever, they're neither were ever superstars, but this
Yeah.
is something that basketball fans all over the world are talking about. And this ain't on the All Star Weekend stage,
Yeah.
so I think this matchup with them two proved that even if it was just NBA players in general, what I'm saying, current guys, I think it would be a big attraction because it'll stir up a lot of conversation. I think it'll probably get guys opportunities. Like, we gotta have this. We gotta have this. This is this no. They got to figure out a way to do it. Weight classes would be dope because I don't want
Mhm.
to see a center versus a point guard. John Sally said, and Kobe said it was true. John Sally played Kobe all the time after practice, and he would beat Kobe Bryant every game. Do anybody think John Sally is a better player than Kobe? Absolutely
Absolutely
not.
not.
But he's 7 foot. Of course he
Mhm.
go win. He go back him down, and it's a 2 foot layup is a lot easier than shooting a 25-foot jumper. And it's
Yeah.
just plain and simple. So bigs versus bigs, smalls versus smalls, or whatever. Unless you're just one of those crazy animals that say I'm gonna play
Or or you gi-
somebody 6 seconds.
or you give like or you give the player the option of like if it's tournament style 1-on-ones, if you're a higher seeded player or whatever the case, you can opt out to not play that person right away, and then you eventually like. Could you imagine if Jokic said, "I'm trying to play in a
Yeah,
1-on-1 tournament"?
yeah, play around with it.
Jokic would have everybody in the field spooked because the way he plays.
Yeah,
But
play.
again, it's there's athleticism, so it'll be cool, man. And I think with that in mind, Is there anybody besides SGA that you've mentioned who would be a good addition to this? Just to kind of like close this out, is there anybody else that you guys would think would be a great addition to the one-on-one from like the Pacers or? Because I think these two teams play such team basketball. I don't really see
Mhm.
anyone
Yeah,
besides
nah,
SGA,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, nah, not with this team. The only other person I could think of who I would love to see play ones is
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving. Like
Oh,
I
yeah. Off
if
top.
if I can see if I
Khalid,
can see
buy my ticket
Kyrie,
right now.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And Kyrie might be he might be animal enough to say, "Nah, I'll do it." And that's all you
I can.
need. You only
Yeah.
need one person. You only need one person. So I could definitely see that. I feel like Kyrie don't feel like he has anything
Ja
to
would be
lose.
nice to see too, man.
He would be nice to see, but
Anybody explosive.
I think Kyrie is such an animal that in his mentality, I think he's the guy that can set it off. And, maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but
No.
that's what I would love to see.
Hmm.
But to end this real quick and get out of here, man. So we can get back to our night, which is going to consist of going to sleep. Pacers, they lose tonight, but will this game? That'd be the question. Will this game? We could go real quick. Will this series? Talking about game. Will this series go past 5 games? I already said no. I said in 5. I think the OKC go win the 2 at home, and I think they go end it in Indiana unless they say, you know what, it'll be nicer to win our first chip in OKC. That's the only reason I can see a 6.
Mhm.
Mm. I'm gonna stay with 6. I said OKC in 6. I'm gonna stay with it. Um, and I knew they had to steal one from OKC, and they already did it. So them being tied 1-1 doesn't surprise me. I'm not changing anything. So I'm still gonna go with OKC in 6. And like, why wouldn't you want to see this series go 6 or 7 games, man?
Yeah,
Indiana is must see TV, so I'll be a
yeah.
little disappointed if it's a 5 game series.
Mm. Mm.
It's going past 5, Mark. I know you want SGA to be the best Canadian. Um, but I'll give you this much. It's either gonna be 6, and I think if you watch basketball like we have, these next few games, like game 4, 5, are really the critical games for me. Game 3, I don't really won't put much weight into it, but it'll tell me who's really in the driver's seat, so to speak, right? But
Mm.
every game will prove something, and I think this is probably gonna go 7 from what I've seen.
Mm.
For the basketball fan, and the Nielsen ratings kind of reflecting poorly on viewership. I don't think that speaks to the quality of basketball that we've been seeing.
Right.
So, to the basketball purists, to the people who enjoy the game for what it is, I hope we get more than 5 as well. So
I hope
Yeah.
so. I hope so, man. Because, like you said, I am loving this series. I love the playoffs. This might be my favorite playoff, just in totality.
yep.
And I can't remember last time I was this locked in and
Mhm.
entertained by
That's true.
Yeah.
playoff basketball. This has
Yeah.
been great, and like I said, it's just been pure. The pure, the pureness of it has been amazing.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna purely end this, even though that probably don't make that on the line, right? But this is our show. We can do what we want.
Yes, sir.
And this
Whatever
is
we
the
want.
closers. The closers, man. Mark and Dog Jelani, we signing out. Till next time. Peace.
Peace.